In this lecture, we're going to see how we can work with custom settings in QML. We have looked at the documentation for settings, and we just saw a way to let the system save everything for you without you doing much more. But when you do things this way, you pay a performance cost of saving the data whenever any of these property changes, and sometimes you don't want this. A solution for that is to save the data yourself, and they give an example of how you can do that. You basically have a settings component. It has an ID and it has a set of properties that you want to save. In this case, we want to save the state. And you see that this item here is reading state information from our settings component here. This is one thing you need to do. You need to read whatever property you want to save from the settings component. And you have to choose a time when you want to save your data. In this case, we are saving the data when this component is destroyed. We are saying settings state equals page state. We are taking the state from this component and saving it in the settings component here when this component dies. And notice that as you use your application, you may get a chance to change the states, and these changes are going to be saved in here. Notice that you pass the default value here. So if you don't have the state set, it is going to be active by default. To play with this, we are going to go to Qt Creator, find a project we have done before. So I'm going to go into recent projects, and I'm going to find the project we did. That project is states with gradient. I want you to go and find it and open it in Qt Creator like this. If we run it, you see that it had a scene like this, and we were able to change between summer and spring, okay, by changing states like this. So what we want is to save the state that we are in, and when we close the application, we want to save the state, and when we run it, we want to pick up the state we saved last time. To be able to play with this, we're going to create a new project and copy over all the files so that things are nice and clean. I don't like to do things over other projects because it confuses students. So what we're going to do is create a new project. I want to do all this live so that you see everything. Qt Quick Application. We're going to call it Settings Demo 2 because this is the second one. Save it in the usual location, hit Next. Choose your Qt version, choose your kit, and finish. We want to change this to custom settings because you are saving things yourself. We want to go to the states with gradient demo project, go in QML and find our QML file. We don't have any special import, but we want to copy everything in here. So we're going to grab everything in the window here, as you see, except for the properties of the window, because we have our own properties in this new project of ours here. We're going to paste the data in here. And if you look, you see that we have images in here. So we need to also import those images. What I want to do, I want to go where this project is saved. I go Show in Explorer. I have a folder of images here. I want to copy it. Go where my project is saved here. Right click, Show in Explorer. And I am going to paste in this folder of images. Now I have it in Settings Demo 2. I can close this, add a new resource file, add a new, choose Qt resource file. It's going to be resources. Next until we finish, add the prefix, take this out, hit enter because we don't want to have a prefix. Add files, images, and we put in our spring and summer images. We save this, and if we run this project of ours, Settings Demo 2, we should have everything we had in this states with gradients demo project. Let's wait and see. and we can change between states. We can close this application and close the states with Gradient's demo project because we don't need it anymore. Close everything in here because we don't want things confusing us. And open our QML file because this is where we want to work. First thing we want to do is to import the settings because that's what we are going to be using in this lecture. And we want to go back to the documentation and adapt this example to save our state. Notice that they have a settings block here. We can copy it, come back to our project. We want to go at the end of the rectangle component, this rectangle here, and it is ending here. And we want to put in the settings that we copied from the documentation. The ID is settings. We can keep that. There's no problem. Control A, Control I to align. Down here, you see that we are saving the property of state. We want to make the state Spring by default. And we want to make the application read the state data from our settings component. So we should take this out and say state settings state. This is the second thing you have to do. The first one is put in your settings component like this, give it an ID, make your application read whatever data you saved from the settings. And the last thing you need to do to make this work is to provide a component on destroyed on the instruction. That's what we want. Okay, we choose to do it here, but you can really save it whenever you want. You can even do this when a user presses some button or whatever. We are doing it right now when this rectangle is destroyed. And in here, we should say settings state equals whatever state is saved in the rectangle here. And notice that this state is part of the rectangle component that contains everything. Okay, this is where this state is defined. So we should save it by saying rectangle ID. I think that's our ID here for this rectangle. Container rect ID. That's what we have. So we should say container rect ID state like this. And before we run the application, we need to remember to go back to the main CPP file and put in our application information. Control A, Control I to align. And I want to change this because it might conflict with the settings we did in the last lecture. You don't want to have two applications with the same set of information. You're just going to mess up things. Let's run. If everything works, we should be able to save our state, whether spring or summer. So we are in spring right now. We can change to be in summer. Close the application, run it. We start in summer, we change to spring, close the application, run it, and you see that we are in spring. Let's change to summer again. We should see summer when we run. Okay, summer. Let's change to spring, close the application. We should see spring when we run, and it is spring here. Now you know how to save your data customly when you close the application or whenever you want to save the data. We are saving when the rectangle component is destroyed, but you can really save it anywhere. The bulk of this is defining the settings component. Make your application read its properties from the settings component and choose a time when you want to save the data. In this case, we saved the data when the rectangle component is destroyed. And ladies and gentlemen, this is how you work with settings to save your data. You can completely let the settings component handle the data for you, pay the price in performance of saving the data whenever a property changes, or you can choose when you want to save the data yourself and do it like we did in this lecture here. In the next lecture, we're going to see how you can save your data using SQLite, an internal database that is built in your system. I'll see you in the next lecture.